Okay, it's now live, so we're just waiting for people to slowly come in.
Jane Stanley, just so you know, when I do my brief introduction presentation, I'll also do it in Spanish.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
La gente está ingresando.
I see 19, 20 people on right now, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So maybe we can wait a few more minutes before we start. What do you think? Yeah.
Sí, hola a todos. Estamos esperando un par de minutitos para poder partir. A que se una la gente que está esperando.
Estamos con 22 personas con Constanza. 23, vamos bien, vamos bien.
Súper. Indíquenme si es que partimos en algún momento para no ocupar el tiempo de todos, y si no, en un minutito ya podríamos estar empezando.
Sí.
A saludarlos y todo. 1 o 2 minutos.
De repente, Constanza, yo creo que ya en honor del tiempo, no sé si quieres,
Sí.
empecemos.
Sí, estoy de
Perfecto.
acuerdo. De esa forma,
Ya.
bueno, igual si se van uniendo las personas, se pueden ir subiendo la conversación sin problema, yo creo. Así que bueno, hola a todos. La mayoría de ustedes me conoce. Para los que no me conocen, mi nombre es Constanza. Yo hoy día estoy a cargo de Geo Ventures. Así que bueno, bienvenidos a todos. Solamente quiero saludarlos y no ocupar demasiado tiempo y contarles que bueno, estamos muy contentos de esta colaboración que tenemos con Invest Hong Kong, y esta es la primera vinculación que hacemos para acercarlos a ustedes como parte de nuestra red, como parte de nuestros incubados, a esta organización y todas las posibilidades que vienen con esto. Entonces eso nos tiene muy contentos. Bueno, así que no voy a ocupar mucho más espacio, solamente quiero darles la bienvenida a todo el equipo de Invest Hong Kong. Quiero darles la bienvenida a ustedes para este webinar, que es Hong Kong, la puerta de entrada a Asia. Y bueno, simplemente quiero dejarlos con Verónica Medina, que es Principal Consultant, y con Jane Chan, que nos van a contar un poquito más específicamente de toda esta oportunidad. Jane es Head of Start Me Up Hong Kong. Igual, si es que cometo cualquier error o hay que hacer cualquier aclaración, ustedes vayan diciéndome nomás, pero nada, estamos muy contentos de esta colaboración, así que espero que les interese, que tengan preguntas y que esto sea el principio de una conversación y de una relación más larga. Así que bueno, los dejo. Verónica, entiendo que ahora nos vas a contar tú un poco más para que podamos entender esta oportunidad desde cero. Así que eso, gracias.
Perfecto. Bueno, muchas gracias, Constanza, por tus palabras. Realmente, muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros esta mañana. Primero que nada, realmente me gustaría agradecer a Divego por todo el trabajo que llevamos trabajando con ellos en, digamos, en apoyar a empresas chilenas a los miembros de ellos, digamos, para poder llegar a Hong Kong. Especialmente, obviamente, agradecer a Roberto Muso, a Constanza y con Sebastián, que también hemos estado trabajando los últimos meses en tratar de llegar a hoy día, realmente. Así que estamos muy contentos con esos. Yo les quiero comentar un poco de la oficina nuestra, tal como dijo Constanza. Nosotros representamos a Invest Hong Kong aquí en Sudamérica. Yo estoy basada acá en Santiago, tengo a mi equipo también, que acá está Jeremy Yap, que también, bueno, lo ven como Consultant Invest HK en la pantalla, pero Jeremy está también basado aquí en Santiago conmigo. Y también tenemos una oficina en Lima, en Perú, que está a cargo Eduardo García Zapatero, que él también está con nosotros hoy en día. Entonces, también agradecer al equipo. El rol de nuestra oficina de Invest Hong Kong acá en la región es justamente para poder tener esta cercanía con las empresas sudamericanas, en este caso con empresas chilenas. Nuestro rol es apoyar a las empresas, a las startups, a los emprendedores para poder llegar a Hong Kong y ayudarlos en cómo hacer eso. Y obviamente Jane va a entrar en mucho más detalles, digamos, de cuáles son las ventajas de Hong Kong, por qué Hong Kong, digamos, para empresas de startup en este ecosistema que realmente es muy dinámico allá. Así que ojalá que se animen. Y también me gustaría, obviamente, agradecer a Jane Chan, a Stanley Ho, que ellos están ubicados en la oficina en Hong Kong y son obviamente parte del equipo de startup allá en nuestra oficina. Yo creo que con eso es todo lo que tengo que decir. Por favor, si hay interés en seguir trabajando o tienen preguntas, obviamente las pueden hacer acá en esta instancia. Ahí pueden ver, digamos, tienen la cajita para preguntas y nosotros las vamos a responder al final de la presentación de Jane y Stanley. Y también lo otro importante es que tenemos traducción simultánea para este webinar. Si ustedes pueden ver en su pantalla, yo creo que en la parte de abajo, a mí me sale en la parte de abajo, hay un botón que dice Interpretation. Entonces ahí ustedes pueden pinchar para tener, digamos, para escuchar obviamente la presentación en castellano. Así que por ahora eso es todo por mí. Muchas gracias de nuevo por estar con nosotros hoy día y realmente ojalá que podamos seguir trabajando después de este webinar. Muchas gracias. So Jane, over to you now.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Can I just say a big thank you to DJ Roy for actually, giving us an opportunity to talk with you all and basically give you some information about Hong Kong as a startup location. Also like to say thank you to my colleagues in Chile as well, who've been like back and forth organizing all the logistics and things, so much appreciated. I just want to spend the next 20 minutes or so just to give you some information about Hong Kong, what startup ecosystem like, what it's like to do business here, what are the kind of different advantages of potentially setting up a base here as a base for your Asian expansion or mainland China kind of expansion. My name is Jane Chan, as my colleague Veronica just gave you some background information. I just want to highlight the fact that the Start Me Up initiative was set up about 6 years ago at Invest Hong Kong. And basically, we've got 3 major missions. We're here to try and support startups, accelerators, incubators, investors, all these different stakeholders of a startup ecosystem to actually establish here. And we work alongside our colleagues around the world. We've got 30 offices around the world, as well as with our 8 sector teams here in Hong Kong. to provide an extra layer of startup-specific resource and information and connections to try and give our clients some really good, I suppose, hand-holding if you're trying to locate your business here in Hong Kong. The other two objectives for our team is basically to promote Hong Kong internationally as a tech hub. So we travel quite a lot to different locations prior to this COVID lockdown. And we are also responsible for actually helping to build the ecosystem on the ground, focus on, you know, looking at funding, focus on developing talent and making sure that there's market access, and of course making sure that the government is completely aware of these different kind of developments, and to try and be that interface between what's happening in the startup ecosystem and potentially some of the policies that follow. So that's just a sort of like a quick synopsis of what our team's objective is. So today, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the business advantages as well as the startup ecosystem. So let me dive right into it. So Hong Kong advantages. There is a reason why Hong Kong is one of those main locations within Asia as a place for people to actually set up their companies if they're looking to expand in Asia. There's some kind of what we call structural advantages, you know, things that have been, you know, really good for business for a very long time, and I've listed some of those items here. One of the things that Hong Kong is well known for is the fact that we are a capital raising location. You know, we're talking about from, you know, private equity side right through to IPOs as well. In fact, if you look at the history of Hong Kong in terms of IPO fundraising, we've been the top location in more cases than not, but always within the top 5 within the past 10 years or so. In fact, by the last year, 160 IPOs were raised and was completed in Hong Kong, raising about 307 billion. You'll see that number, it's Hong Kong dollars. In terms of US dollars, we're talking about maybe that's about 40, 45 billion US dollars. So, you know, we are the top IPO center in the world. We also recently structured the voting rights as well for biotech listings, so that pre-IPO biotechs, if any of you folks are in the biotech kind of space and you're looking potentially to fundraise, then Hong Kong might be a good location for that, just because pre-revenue you can actually get listed, because we know that biotechs find that, you know, that longer runway and that kind of financial support is really important. We are free and open market, so, you know, there's no barrier to trade. We don't have any kind of like restrictions in terms of moving money in and out of Hong Kong, bar of course the standard kind of like compliance issues that the world has to follow these days. There's no restrictions in terms of capital, talent movements, these kind of things. Our tax system is one of the reasons why we also get a lot of you know, regional headquarters being set up here in Hong Kong and regional offices. We've got a really, really simple system. The standard across the board for corporate tax is basically 16.5%. But a year and a half ago, our chief executive actually just reduced that even more to half, so 8.25% to basically for the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars worth of profit. And the idea for that, of course, is to try and save some money for, you know, new SMEs, startups, you know, to try and save some of that money that they would have paid in tax, that they can invest back into their own business and get themselves into, you know, a more stronger kind of financial position so they can scale. But ultimately, you would never pay more than 16.5 corporate tax. We also have like a personal tax, you know, it's a personal income tax, and that's about 15%. That's the maximum bracket you would have to pay. And then we don't have a lot of other kind of taxes that you're maybe used to. We don't have VAT tax, we don't have withholding tax, we don't have, you know, a number of these kind of taxes, which is why it's actually very easy to understand exactly how much you've got in terms of revenue that will stay in your own company versus what you have to pay out. You know, one of our strategic strengths, of course, is our location, our geographic location. We really are in the center of Asia. So within 3 hours flight, for example, you can actually go to most of the main cities within Asia. Within 5 hours flight, you're reaching half the world's population. So, you know, that's a substantial benefit if you're a startup and you have to do a lot of meetings. You know, say you're meeting investors in different locations, you can literally fly out to a different country in the day and come back the same day as well if you needed to. You know, a lot of Asia, again, COVID situation notwithstanding, usually like to do things a lot by face to face. So, you know, you might find that you're traveling a little bit more once things have settled down and you're here to potentially meet with clients or investors, you know, other kind of opportunities as well. So having this location in the center of Asia is hugely convenient. We are one of the world's top international airports. It is one of the busiest airports in the world. We've got, you know, flights to 220 destinations. You know, there's several flights a day. It used to be to even to the UK, for example. There's like, you know, something like 20 odd flights. So, you know, it really is one of those hubs as well. And that, even within the context of the whole, you know, technology side and how comfortable we are now doing these Zoom calls and other types of virtual conferencing, that strategic kind of location is also very useful as well. We've got a very transparent rule of law. We've got an independent judiciary, and you'll see here we are the only common law jurisdiction in mainland China, operating both in Chinese and English as well. And of course, you know, IP protection, because we're running the common law system, we've inherited a lot of things from our colonial days, and it's very much on a world standard. In fact, Hong Kong is one of the financial disputes capitals of the world, because of these, you know, the virtue of the fact that we're based here in Asia. We have this common law system, and we of course have the context of mainland China with a separate legal system as well. So, you know, these are very strong reasons as to why some of the companies choose to locate here in Hong Kong. But one of the things I did want to talk about, actually, in addition to, you know, the inherent advantages, is that the GBA, the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, this is going to be something, if you haven't heard much about this, you really should. When we talk about this overseas, a lot of startups, investors, other types of people are very, very interested. So what this is, it used to be called the Pearl River Delta, and it's an area in southern China, part of the Guangdong province. Basically, what the GBA is effectively 9 cities within mainland China, plus Macau and Hong Kong, which are called special administrative regions. And collectively, these 9 cities make up the GBA. What's fantastic about this is the fact that we are talking about a huge potential market here. It's the fastest growing consumer market within southern China, and it's basically its wealthiest kind of cluster. I mean, obviously you'll find it in Shanghai or in Beijing. There's clusters of like, you know, very well-to-do and very savvy kind of consumers, but across the board, in terms of like a larger kind of region, this is it. So this GBA, it's got a population of 71 million people just in these 9 locations, and that's greater than the UK. It's bigger than Italy and South Africa, you see here. The GDP is also incredibly high, considering we're talking about 9 cities and within, you know, quite a small region of mainland China. It's 1.6 trillion US. It's incredibly high, and by virtue of its closeness to Hong Kong, you know, this whole area is the people that live here are used to having very advanced kind of technology and products. So, you know, a very kind of sophisticated audience. And if you were thinking about potentially wanting to sell to the mainland Chinese market, this is a great test area, because it's sort of in between like the more real, you know, Chinese-centric and cultural kind of aspect of the rest of the mainland China. But these ones are slightly more international. So if you were looking to potentially adapt your products, your technology to, you know, this kind of consumer, it's, you know, it's a great test bed to basically refine and just see what works well before you take it to the other locations within, you know, China, which, as you probably heard, is incredibly big, but each province also has its slightly kind of different nuances in terms of culture and in terms of, you know, the way they they adopt different technology or products and things. You might have heard of tier 1 city to tier 2. Basically, what it refers to is how sophisticated, I suppose, those kind of cities are to kind of international products and services. So, you know, this is a very good area. And because this GBA was designated by the mainland central government authorities, there's a big priority to really develop this area collectively in terms of like infrastructure, in terms of loosening kind of, you know, I suppose rules and regulations that may apply in other parts of mainland China. So it's a really good area for you to think about. It's also the home of Tencent, HTC, Huawei, and a number of other big tech companies. So, you know, similar to Silicon Valley, where, you know, you've got some big companies that spin off little cluster effects, that's also happening in Shenzhen as well. And there's a new kind of science park that's being developed as well between the borders between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. That would be, you know, this great area of collaboration, innovation, R&D as well. So about the startup ecosystem, this is what I really like. You know, the Hong Kong startup ecosystem is incredibly vibrant. We've got a very strong network of accelerators, incubators, and you'll see the ones I've listed down below here. You know, we've got the general ones and the specific ones. So the two biggest ones are the two kind of public funded kind of programs. So you'll see on your screen there, the top left and the second left, basically Cyberport and Science Park, those are publicly funded, but they're called statutory bodies because they're actually run directly by a board. So even though they're publicly funded, they have a lot more independence and a lot more market kind of savvy as well, because they're so used to dealing directly with the end user. They've got a number of programs there. If you want to do R&D, you can do it there. They have accelerator programs. They've got investor networks associated with them. There's also a bunch of tech tenants already located in those locations, so you can potentially, you know, tap into that kind of network. So they're very big. But in addition to those kind of public ones, we've also got the more specialized kind of ones. So, for example, the Hong Kong AI Lab. This is a joint venture between Alibaba and SenseTime, one of the unicorns, the AI unicorns in Hong Kong. And what they do is basically try and support AI companies and get them ready for market to Asia, and in particular focus in mainland China. So if you've got a really strong AI solution, you've also demonstrated you know, traction in other kind of markets, and you want to tap into potentially mainland China or Asia, you should really talk to these folks, because obviously with the network of Alibaba and SenseTime, you would be getting quite a strong leg up in terms of accessing the market in those kind of locations. We've also got Betatron and people like Brink. Betatron is, you know, they've been around in Hong Kong for several years, and their accelerator is, it's just getting, it's very, very well respected. It was founded by 6 VCs in Hong Kong, so they really are very pragmatic. They invest a decent amount into the companies as well. I think that this cohort this time round, they get like 150,000 US, as well as a whole bunch of other kind of support as well. And again, they're really relevant for scale-ups rather than the really early stage kind of companies. I think this time they basically had about 2,500 applications for 10 positions. So you can imagine the quality of company that we're talking about. Brink is expanded, you know, they've got a base here in Hong Kong. This is where the headquarters are, but they've also got offices in the GBA, as well as in Europe, the US, and the Middle East as well. And they've got a number of accelerated programs in food tech and health tech and drones and hardware. So again, very, very savvy about what the opportunities are here within Asia. You know, Hong Kong, the fact that we are, you know, quite a small city with a population of 7.4 million people, you know, or thereabouts, the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem has really just only been around for the past 6 or 7 years. But in that time, we've created 7 unicorns. In fact, last year it was 8, but one of them have actually just closed down. So that's one of the highest per capita unicorn creations in the world, actually. And there's a reason for that. The people here, once they, you know, if you're ready to scale, Hong Kong can really take you to that next step. You know, there's also a bunch of like government-backed programs and lots and lots of events and a very supportive community as well. So when you come to Hong Kong, it is incredibly international. It doesn't feel like you're, you know, going to a place with, you know, not understanding the culture and things. It's so bilingual, it's so international that you feel like, you know, pretty much at home here, I think, from the get-go. So more about the ecosystem. So we've been tracking the development of this, the ecosystem through the survey we've been doing for the past 6 years, and we were in the process of doing our 7th one now. But you'll see residing at various co-work spaces, accelerators and incubators last year, which is the most recent kind of data we've got over 3,100 startups residing in those locations, and you can basically see that over here. But over the years, you've just seen the growth over the past 6 years. We were close to about 200% increase in size, and just in terms of accelerators, incubators, as well as co-work spaces, that's increased to to about 96 kind of organizations, but the actual number of locations is actually more than that. So, you know, that robust growth really reflects how dynamic and strong our startup ecosystem is. One of the things that we are incredibly proud of, and the fact that, you know, I think it's one of the main reasons we've been so good at creating unicorns, is the fact that we are incredibly international and diverse in terms of the startup founders you see on this chart here. So about 60% of the startups here have, you know, Hong Kong founders, but about 34%, so a third of our founders are from outside of Hong Kong. And basically you see the top kind of countries of origins here for those founders from the US, from mainland China, UK, France, and Australia, and actually India make up the top 6 kind of countries of origin for our international founders. That is incredibly high. 1 in 3 founders in Hong Kong is not from Hong Kong. And as you probably know, working in the startup industry, you know that diversity matters. You know, when you bring in that international kind of outlook and experience and different ways of resolving problems, and you tie that in with people from Hong Kong who've obviously got the language capabilities, who have the understanding about the markets both in Hong Kong, mainland China, and throughout Asia, you know, you really are giving your company a little bit of a leg up in terms of just, you know, making it that much stronger. So it's something that, again, that it's going to make you feel really familiar. I suppose when you come to Hong Kong, you decide that this is the location for you. You know, you'll be meeting a lot of people in the same boat, and we've got a lot of different kind of nationalities here. So once you come here, you really understand what a dynamic melting pot it really is. The top business sector is fintech, of course, Hong Kong being one of the financial capitals of the world. That is our biggest sector of startups. But we've also got quite a few in the e-commerce, supply chain, logistics kind of space. Not surprising, because China, of course, is the biggest e-commerce market globally. So there's a lot of companies here set up to actually support all of that. I also wanted to talk very quickly about the fintech ecosystem as well, just because I know some of you folks are in the fintech sector. You know, the fintech sector in Hong Kong is probably one of the top locations in the world for fintech, you know, in terms of the number of people, in terms of the opportunities we've got. You see here that so over 70% of the global renminbi SWIFT settlements go through Hong Kong. So if you were in any kind of like forex kind of space, or you're doing trade financing, or you are looking to develop more in terms of the different kind of currencies, Hong Kong in one location, you would actually have access to 70% of those are renminbi players being based here. We've got 160 licensed banks, like all the insurers that you can think about. We've also got an incredibly actually progressive regulator. There's actually 3 different regulators looking after banks, looking after securities, and looking after insurance. But they all have regulatory sandboxes, and in fact, we had the sandboxes. We were probably second to London in terms of establishing that, maybe about 5-6 years ago. So actually 4 to 5 years ago. So there was, you know, this innovation in fintech has been happening for quite a while, and recently there was 8 companies that were awarded virtual banking licenses as well, and there's now a raft of digital insurance license that is in the process of being awarded. So in terms of fintech, there really is a lot of things happening. You know, there's also this Wealth Connect kind of program that is allowing us, that's going to be launched out, rolled out soon, that's going to be allowing us to actually do more business with the GBA, the other cities within mainland China, which obviously because of a different kind of financial system, legal system, it has very different kind of rules and regulations. But this is actually going to be rolled out quite soon. And again, that potential, if you're a fintech, to potentially tap into that kind of financial services market within the GPA, you know, that raises your kind of market access from about 7.4 million people to about 71 million people, you know, within a very short space of physical distance. Is actually a very good opportunity. So one of the things that, of course, you know, the government has been very much focused on has been trying to support all this innovation and you know, this technology kind of development that's happening. And of course, a lot of cities are also doing the same, because we see this path, that this route to digitization is something that's going on. And, you know, the COVID situation has actually accelerated that substantially. But even prior to all these kind of developments happening, you know, the Hong Kong government really recognized that there's a lot we can do to focus and nurture this kind of ecosystem, and in turn, hopefully bring benefits to our economy and hire more people in this kind of space. And you'll see some of the kind of funding programs we've got happening here. I won't go through this in detail. Suffice to say that you know, I'm happy to leave a copy of this presentation with you, and you can ask Veronica and my colleagues to actually get a copy of it. But I just wanted to say, like, across the whole gamut of the startup kind of life cycle, you know, right from the very beginning of companies set up, and you get a waiver of business fees and annual return fees, you know, to doing the R&D, to hiring staff, to doing actually even business development and fundraising and expansion. There is a number of different types of funds that are available to do that. So maybe I'll just highlight a few kind of items here. So for example, this Enterprise Support Scheme, the ESS, is basically a matching grant whereby the money you put in, the government, if you apply for this and you're successful, the government will match on a one-to-one basis as a grant. The government does not own any kind of IP in this. This is all yours, but basically your project has got to demonstrate, you know, a depth of innovation and you know, nobleness, I guess, in those. And the amount of money that the government will give you per project, and your business can be comprised of several different projects, is 10 million Hong Kong, which works out to be about 1.3 million US. You know, quite a substantial amount actually. And once you've got these kind of like, you know, these kind of fundings, these kind of grants approved, there's a whole bunch of other kind of like spin-off, like kind of deductions and other kind of grant system that knocks in further down the line as well, which you'll see here. Note a lot of the details of these kind of funding programs is also available on our website, on the startmeup.hk website. So you can go there and find exactly what these programs entail. But if you are doing R&D and you can afford to send maybe about 2 researchers here to potentially maybe adapt your technology to make it appropriate for the Asian market, there is a potential that you can apply for this funding and get this kind of financial support in your business. There's also kind of other schemes like the Tech Task Program. These are actually visa schemes. So it's not all just financial. We obviously try to, you know, give as much kind of financial support, pragmatic financial support as we can, but it's rolled out across holistically across other areas. So for example, this Tech Task Program is an accelerated visa kind of program whereby people with experience in certain fields, like for example in fintech and AI, those kind of areas, get this accelerated visa in less than 2 weeks. So, you know, it's a very compelling kind of proposition actually. And of course, once you've actually got your product on the market and you're looking to do some kind of business development, we do understand that sometimes companies are a little bit reticent to take on new technologies. You know, as a startup, even though you have very experienced founders, you may not have you know, the kind of track record, and that makes like a companies a bit reticent to take that risk, I suppose. So there's programs like the technology voucher scheme, whereby the government will actually give some money towards your client if they decide to leverage technology to improve their business operations or enhance their company's capabilities. But we're talking about, you know, sort of like innovative kind of technologies as well. So again, this, you know, we can give you more funding. In fact, Veronica, my colleague Stanley listed here, can also give you more details if you send an email to us later on, just to give you some more oversight. But exactly what Invest Hong Kong is here to do is to try and give you some kind of signposting in terms of what kind of like funding that might be most relevant for you. You do have to be a Hong Kong-based company in order to avail of this, but you can start looking into some of these programs and apply for some of these programs. And of course, if you're successful, then you are expected to set something up here.
So Jane, just sorry to interrupt, 5
Sure.
more minutes.
Okay, right. Okay, I'm just going to speed up a little bit. So just a couple of case studies. You know, Dejevo did ask to get, you know, just to give some kind of like background as to how companies can actually get established here. And I just thought we would give like a couple of case studies here. One is more an early kind of stage company, and the second one is probably the one that goes to the next level. So Link here is basically a US company, and the founder here is a lady called Peggy Choi, really smart lady, used to work in an investment bank. And she got fantastic kind of mentorship while she was in the investment bank, and she really realized how much value these kind of mentors or these kind of advisors were, you know, whether we're talking about personal career development or just even in a business kind of sense as well. But she knew that if that wasn't available to everybody, especially to the SMEs, because her mum actually ran a kind of small business here in Hong Kong, but didn't have access to any of these really professional kind of mentors, and some of them were coaches. So she created this new business, and because she was in you know, in the investment banking side, she did manage to get $1 million in US in seed funding. Not everyone is so lucky to get that, but she did get that, and she raised a Series A in 2017. They're doing really well. They're expanding to lots of overseas markets, and they actually currently have over 35,000 business experts across a whole gamut of different areas to try and support companies and advise SMEs or personal, you know, basis. Next one is Airwallex. This is much more about a more bigger company. They were already worth about 200 mil when they came to Hong Kong. They were founded in Melbourne, and they're fintech. They've just one of the companies that you know, that is in process of getting or working with people to actually get like a digital banking license. But in 2017, they raised a Series A from Tencent, basically for 13 mil on Square Peg Capital. But their original seed round was actually led by a VC who's based in Hong Kong as well as in Beijing, the 3 million. And through that kind of connection, you know, they basically got exposure to a bunch of other kind of, you know, follow-on investors and partner investors, you know, as these, you know, these VCs tend to have like preferential kind of relationship with different kind of investors. And they decided to basically move to Hong Kong in 2018. You know, in that time, since 2018 when they came, they were worth about 200 million, like I said. But by the time they hit the end of 2019, they were already a unicorn in terms of how much funding they were able to raise. So Hong Kong really is a serious place if you are really looking to scale and hit the big time. You know, in Melbourne, they could have stayed in Melbourne and they would have done really well. It's a great solution, and they would have like been able to basically expand to different markets anyway. But coming to Hong Kong basically accelerated the process, because you've got a lot of investors who are used to, you know, writing bigger checks. The smaller checks are even more difficult than is the bigger checks. And of course, that proximity to mainland China means that you've just got a whole gamut of investors that maybe they wouldn't have had access to before being based in Australia. So they're doing incredibly well on one of our unicorns. I just want to also talk about FinTech Week. We have Invest Hong Kong organizes two main kind of flagship tech events every year. One of them is the Hong Kong FinTech Week. It's fantastic. It really is very good. And for the first time this year, it's going to be a virtual one, so you can definitely participate. If you're a fintech and you're trying to access potential investors, potential clients, just to find a little bit more about what's happening and how to tap into Asia, it's really worth trying to apply for the fast track program that they've got running. I think the deadline is the 13th. And what basically, if you get selected as part of that, you get like introductions to investors, you get special meetings with potential clients, and it's a little bit more like a kind of bespoke kind of program to really try and support you. So it's really worth looking into if you're interested to potentially scale this area. But it really is one of those top fintech events where it's not just the top unicorns or like top financial companies talking, it's the founders, the chairmans, you know, the top people within those kind of companies talking. And it's just fascinating. You know, I don't look after fintech. I've got colleagues, you know, there's a fintech team dedicated to that. But even as someone who looks after, you know, all the other kind of sectors in general, I find it really, really interesting. So even if you're not potentially looking to scale here, but you want to find out what's happening in the fintech kind of space within Asia, do check it out. And the dates are from the 2nd to the 6th of November, and you can see all the details by just, you know, checking out the QR code here. The next one is my one. This is the one that's just happened in July, and this is across the board all through, you know, lots of different kind of like verticals and sectors. So our team basically helps, you know, companies, whether they're in fintech or agri-tech or you know, the ICT side, the hardware side. It's really focused across the board on tech startups. For this week, we had here verticals ranging from retail technology, you know, startup resources. There was smart city kind of technologies. So lots of great partners. And for this year, it was a virtual event, and you know, we were blown away at how popular it was. Actually, we had 181,000 attendees. Normally in a physical event, we get about 20,000 over the week. This one, because we were able to broadcast to China, mainland China, and the numbers there are just crazy. You know, we really managed to scale that. And you know, we had Manny Pacquiao as one of our speakers. When we first launched the Stand Me Up Hong Kong Festival about 6 years ago, we had Elon Musk as our keynote speaker. So it really does attract you know, some really good industry experts, and you know, and it's just fascinating. So next year, please get involved and hopefully even think about coming over here. Anyway, that is my presentation. These are the contacts. If you need to reach out to me or to Veronica, please feel free to do so. And then I'm actually just going to switch it over now to my colleague who will show you a very short video. Actually, we've just completed the video for our festival, which I really wanted to showcase to you. And you will be the first kind of non-internal people to look at this video. So please, can I just ask my colleague to switch that over, please?
Whatever decision we have today is going to be wrong tomorrow.
Hong Kong must become a technology and innovation hub. We have no choice.
Are we faced with this retail apocalypse? And do we have to rethink our strategies?
Those are great ways to learn how to ask questions and meet people.
A lot of people talking about diversity, but how you embrace it really from the bottom of your heart.
The answer to can money make you happy is yes, but to a point.
作为一个企业，尤其是有野心的企业家，那你如何利用好资本是非常重要的。
People are doing more online activities, right? So more e-commerce, more virtual conferences. A lot of these activities are done online, which facilitates crypto transactions.
Our pace of learning, despite technology, is still too slow. I think data has to be accessible too. With more data, then the opportunities will come, then the innovation will come.
It's important for government, business community, and the society at large to work together to respect the science and at the same time adopt this new normal into our practices.
I think one of the types of things that young people have been doing through mobile phones and digital connection is supporting each other online and having sort of socially and emotionally supportive relationships.
The internet was just a great vehicle for that, and the internet changed communications and information and gaming and entertainment and media, all sorts of industries.
We need to be better role models for the AI in order for the AI to actually lead us to a benevolent future.
And I'm so excited to see the disruptors and the beautiful entrepreneurs coming out of Hong Kong to truly redefine what it means, your creativity, your resilience, and your smarts to put it out there.
How we can make this ecosystem more robust and more sustainable in the future, even there are new tech challenges coming.
Just as video game developer NetEase and e-commerce retailer JD.com, both of whom listed in Hong Kong last month, following in the welcome week of tech giant Alibaba's secondary listing here last November.
It's actually exceeded my expectation.
They're having a lot of fun down there.
I did feel like there's a global audience.
So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Sebastián, do you want to ask some of the questions that we have from the audience? O
Sí. O Constanza, si quiere hacerlas también puede ser.
Sí, ok. Dale, Seba, hay una pregunta.
Dame un segundo. Primero, dice...
Jane, do you have your interpretation to English on so that you can hear the question?
No, I don't. Sorry, I'm just going to turn that on now. Okay, so in English. Gotcha. And I can actually see the chat here as well. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're okay now, Jane?
Claro, tú me avisas para poder...
Sí, dale, Sebastián, ya está con la interpretación en inglés.
Perfecto. Aquí yo creo que esta pregunta la hace Darío y se refiere por la parte chilena y por la parte de Hong Kong. Si es que existe ayuda del gobierno para establecer las startups en Hong Kong, cualquier tipo de préstamo o otro tipo de ayuda en extranjero. Por el caso de... Me gustaría poder entender un poco los programas de fomento o por dónde parten las startups para poder ir a Hong Kong. Lo primero que debiesen hacer o a qué organización acercarse por su lado, y por el lado chileno nosotros después respondemos. No hay ningún problema en eso.
Sure. So the government does have a number of different kind of programs to help startups, but you do have to be a physically registered entity here in Hong Kong first. I mentioned some of the other kind of bigger kind of R&D kind of research programs and things. And those ones you can actually, start the process and see whether there's any kind of interest on the part of the government. But for the ones, if you're actually looking to access the Hong Kong market, we really believe that one of the good ways to do it is to basically apply to some of the more established accelerators. I mentioned the Betatron ones, the Brink ones, or even the Science Park and Cyberport ones. There are plentiful programs. There's also soft landing kind of programs being offered by Science Park, for example. And those are all good ways to actually tap into the Hong Kong market and see whether it's relevant for you. But it's not until you're actually establish as a company here in Hong Kong. And I think some of the funding requires you to have been established here for a few months, or in some cases, maybe slightly even longer than that, in order for you to be able to be eligible for some of the funding programs. Veronica, do you want to add to this?
Yes, so I think what, I'll say it in Spanish, just in benefit of the audience here. Sí, muchos de los programas que mostró Jane durante la presentación, esos programas de subsidios, como ella indicó, las empresas tienen que ser una empresa hongkonesa para poder acceder a esos subsidios del gobierno de Hong Kong. Ahora, lo que yo creo que es súper importante que ustedes sepan es que nosotros como ente gubernamental los podemos apoyar, y de hecho estamos apoyando varias startups chilenas, argentinas, peruanas y colombianas en este momento. La estamos apoyando en ese proceso de, por ejemplo, participar en programas de incubación, en programas de aceleración en Hong Kong. Hay algunas de nuestras empresas que se han registrado ya en Hong Kong para poder ser parte de esos programas de incubación. Y todos esos servicios, ese servicio de apoyo que nosotros les podemos brindar, todos esos servicios son gratuitos. Entonces, ahí yo creo que hay una ventaja bastante grande, porque como ven con la presentación de Jane, el nexo, digamos, de Invest Hong Kong en lo que es el ecosistema de startup en Hong Kong es muy fuerte. Entonces, por favor, realmente les digo que se contacten con nosotros para poder ayudarlos y orientarlos para entrar a este ecosistema. Y ahí yo creo que, Sebastián, tú ibas a responder por la parte de Chile.
Sí, respecto a los programas de internacionalización como tal, para poder escalar a otros países, Corfo es la entidad que entrega los subsidios para poder realizarlo. Ahora, específicamente, instrumentos por país, desconozco que existan, sino que existen instrumentos genéricos que apoyan esta expansión, y ahí sin duda alguna dentro de estos instrumentos se puede cofinanciar la expansión a otros países, y ahí podrían acercarse hacia ustedes para poder planificar esa expansión.
Y ahí agregar solamente un comentario más a lo que acaba de mencionar Sebastián. Nosotros aquí en Chile hemos estado trabajando bastante con ProChile, porque ellos tienen un departamento que está viendo innovación, y hemos hecho un par de eventos con ellos específicamente en la área fintech, pero me imagino que también están tomando otro tipo de tecnologías. Entonces, ProChile podría ser interesante, y también estamos trabajando fuerte con Chile Fintech, la asociación de fintech aquí en Chile.
Alejandra pregunta mobile. Alejandra, ¿podrías explicar tu pregunta?
Veronica?
Ya. El número celular, Alejandra, de nosotros, ¿estás preguntando? No tengo...
Sí, de Verónica.
Ya, ya. Ahí te lo vamos a dar. Yo veo aquí, sí, lo voy a escribir, pero también había otra pregunta en el chat, Sebastián.
Sí, hay otra pregunta. Acaba de llegar otra pregunta. Hay otra pregunta que se hizo hace un rato, en honor al tiempo podría ser la última.
No, yo también tengo una pregunta después, así que voy a agregar mi pregunta.
Aquí Darío pregunta también, que tiene una preocupación, que qué pasa actualmente con la situación política y la situación de los impuestos. Si es que hay algún tema que debiesen estar ellos considerados para poder expandirse a Hong Kong. Si es que ha cambiado algún tipo de regulación, por ejemplo.
Jane, that's really, that question is really relating kind of if there's any effects from the mainland, from Chinese laws in particular, any pitfalls that they should be aware of.
Right. So you're probably referring specifically to the national security law that was, basically enacted a few months ago. At this point, the law is very much trying to encourage a stable kind of business environment here. We are still seeing a lot of companies interested in Hong Kong. I think if anything, the law probably makes things a little bit more predictable and clear. And we don't think there's going to be any kind of impact in terms of business. And it really is targeted towards, quite a very small section of society that the mainland Chinese government actually think might be problematic. So, in terms of business sense, we don't think there's going to be any kind of impact.
Y solamente para agregar ahí, por favor tengan en mente que Hong Kong es una región administrativa especial. Entonces, como mencionó Jane en el comienzo, el sistema legal, el sistema de impuestos es completamente independiente al del continente chino, y obviamente esa es la razón por las ventajas de Hong Kong, porque digamos es parte de China. Saben trabajar con el continente chino, por razones obvias, pero también tienen estas ventajas, digamos, que son bastante fuertes, digamos, como el sistema legal, los impuestos, y por eso hay muchas empresas internacionales, digamos, que se instalan allá para poder abarcar ese mercado que también presenta muchas oportunidades.
Perfecto. Constanza, ¿tú tenías una pregunta? Para ir cerrando porque está en honor al tiempo.
Sí, voy a hacer una pregunta cortita. A nosotros nos interesa muchísimo la tecnología también que están desarrollando acá, y si bien nosotros desarrollamos tecnología, nos interesa, sabemos que para las startups también es un desafío importante. Entonces quisiera saber si es que hay algún tipo de programa de transferencia tecnológica que tengan. Lo estamos pensando hoy mi pregunta va desde Hong Kong, digamos, para poder incorporar en las startups que después queremos potenciar y que queremos incluso llevar para allá, si hay alguna forma como de transferir tecnología.
We do have technology transfer functions on 2 levels, actually. One is actually within the universities directly. Each one of the universities have very comprehensive tech transfer kind of facilities, and they work with private organizations as well. So it's not just what's been developed IP-wise within the university. There's also, I think, 6 research institutions in Hong Kong that's focused on different areas. For example, we've got, ASTRI that does applied kind of like research and things. And it's also a good opportunity to have a chat with them as well to see whether they can help to basically help to commercialize some of these kind of technologies to adapt it specifically for the Asian market, for example. So there is that kind of support. Hong Kong is also an IP trading hub. So for companies that just want to trade the IPs, there's actually a government department responsible for managing that as well. So again, reach out to us, to Veronica, to the guys in Chile to get more information, and we'd be happy to give you that.
Yeah, great. I would love to have that information in order to explore it and maybe see if we can, I don't know, bring some of that technology here also.
Yeah, we would love to see, actually. I mean, Veronica has actually introduced so many amazing companies to us from South America, from Chile, and we would love to see more of that, actually, just to see what the technology is like.
Sí, no, absolutamente. Tenemos varias empresas chilenas con unas tecnologías increíbles que tienen mucho potencial en Hong Kong. Entonces, también la transferencia para el otro lado.
Sí, súper, buenísimo. Bueno, podemos ahí explorar, Verónica, si es que nos puedes después dar más adelante,
Absolutamente.
Voy a responder una pregunta que hizo Andrés que es de interés. Pregunta, si quiero expandirme a Hong Kong, ¿por dónde debo comenzar? ¿Me acerco a su institución como primer paso? Y ahí, no sé si Verónica quiere responder.
Jane, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to. I think we mentioned already maybe some of the good natural routes to enter is through the accelerators and incubators, specifically Science Park and Cyberport, just because they're big and they have the capacity to basically absorb a lot of these kind of companies. But another way is to also just come over here and try to do some kind of business development as well. If you're looking potentially at Hong Kong and the GBA as a potential market, go through event or something, or even just come over just to do a recce to see whether there is that potential relevance, appetite for what you folks are doing. And of course, at the Chile office and also in the head office, we would be also happy to support and connect you to relevant clusters if there are those kind of clusters around as well. If we think that there is a particularly good opportunity to connect you with kind of investors as well, and this we do have the caveat, we have to be very sensitive whether the company addresses the kind of space that investors like, but we can potentially make those kind of introductions too if we see there being quite a good fit. So accelerators and incubators are a great way to go, or just come over, do a recce, potentially check out the market, or leverage our services, and we'll see how we connect a little bit more to the clusters.
Absolutamente. Y ahí solamente para agregar a lo que comenta Jane y un poco de lo que yo mencioné antes, algunas de estas empresas chilenas que se están de hecho registrando en Hong Kong, de hecho una recién la semana pasada terminó el registro, nosotros hicimos la conexión específicamente con el Hong Kong Science Park, que es lo que uno de los programas de incubación que menciona Jane. Entonces, esos nexos lo podemos hacer a través de nosotros. Entonces, apoyarlos en todo ese proceso, cuál programa puede ser mejor para ustedes, dependiendo obviamente del enfoque de su tecnología. Entonces, pueden empezar por nosotros.
Excelente. No hay más preguntas.
Perfecto. Bueno,
Great.
muchas gracias a todos por su tiempo, por estar acá, a Divego, obviamente, por darnos esta plataforma, a Jane y Stanley por estar con nosotros hoy día desde Hong Kong. I don't know, Jane, if you want to say also some closing words, and then Constanza.
I just want to say a big thank you to Constantia, to Sebastian, and also to you, Patricio, for helping, and my colleagues, but most of all to all you startups out there who's taking time out really early in the morning to listen to us. And I hope we've made this presentation worthwhile, and we'd be happy to give you any kind of advice and support should you think about Hong Kong as being your next journey.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for those words. Thank you, Veronica, for everything. I know you have worked together with Sebastián in order to put all this webinar for us today. Así que gracias, me siento un poco bilingüe, y gracias a todos los que se conectaron, gracias a todos los emprendedores, a nuestro equipo también. Sabemos que hay otras personas también de nuestra empresa que también se conectaron para ver esta oportunidad, que sin duda es muy, muy interesante. Así que gracias por todo, y espero que esto sea el primer paso como de varias futuras conversaciones.
Absolutamente. Cuídense a donde estén, por favor, cuídense mucho. Hasta luego. Bye, Jane, Stanley, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Bye everyone. Vamos después, para los que tengan dudas, les vamos a mandar la información, les vamos a mandar la grabación, el contacto, todo lo que necesitan, porque para los que estén interesados en seguir dando pasos en esta línea. Así que no se preocupen por ese lado. Ahí
Muchas
Sebastián les
gracias.
va a de todo.
Yo le voy a mandar detalle. Gracias a todos.
Perfecto,
Chao.
muchas gracias. Chao.
Chao.
Thanks. Bye-bye.